To control your FarmBot, you will need to create an account for FarmBot's web interface software. To do so, go to the URL in the top left corner here and follow their detailed instructions on how to make your account and set up your FarmBot software to match your physical system. For example, you will need to input the dimensions of your physical system so that the software can match this. Once you have set up an account, you can go to myfarmbot.io and log in using the login credentials that you just created. After doing this, in order to implement our ROUSE2 system, we will create some points and sequences that the robot then follows. To create a point, go to the top left corner and click on the tab that goes to points. As you can see, I have already created points for my specific system, and these points show up on the layout of my hydroponic system with these green dots. To create a new point, click the green plus. Add a name for your point. It is recommended that you say something about the point's location in this name so that you can remember which plant it is corresponding to. For example, row 1, plant 1. Then the radius of your point will only determine how big it shows up on your graphical user interface. For example, these green circles that represent the points I have already made have a radius of 15. For this test point, I will use a radius of 30 as an example. The range for X and Y coordinates will depend on how big your system is. Mine goes from 0 to 1,200. So for this example point, I will say 100, 100. Insert the values for where you want your point to be. You can also determine the height of this point, since this is in a 3D space. For me, I'm going to use -50, because that gives me a decent height above the plants, but it will depend on where your homing location was set. To save the point, click Save. Now, in your list of points, you will see your point at the bottom. The list of points is ordered in order of how recently you have made that point. The point we just created is down here at 100, 100. You can also create points by clicking directly on the map. To do so, click the green plus again, and just click wherever you want your point to be on the map, and the X and Y coordinates will automatically pop up on the left. Now, just add a radius, and a z-value, and a name, and click Save. Now our second point shows up in this list as well, and on the map. To map out where all of your plants are in your hydroponic system, you can either measure them out and use a little bit of math to determine their coordinates, or you can move the robotic arm to their location and record that point directly. You can view the current location of the robotic arm two different ways. One is by looking at these coordinates at the top, and the second is by seeing the point directly on the map of where the robot is. This red line, which gradually fades out, shows the path that the robot is following. My robot is currently going through the sequence of going to each plant and taking a picture. What's useful about seeing the location of the arm is that when the motors aren't running, you can safely, manually move the robotic arm with your hand to be directly above the location of your plant, and then click on that location to create your point as I just showed. Once you have created all your points, you can program a sequence that will tell the robot exactly in which order you want to go to those points, how much time you want to spend at those points, and if there are any other actions you want to take at those points, for example, taking a picture. To make a sequence, go to the top left menu for Sequences. Clicking on this will bring you to a list of pre-programmed sequences that exist in the FarmBot software, and the sequences that you have created on your own. To create a new sequence, press the green plus again. And now there is a large menu of sequence steps that you can add. It is recommended that between each step, you add a short wait so that the robot has time to respond to what you're telling it to do. This wait is in milliseconds, so adding 1,000 milliseconds will make the robot wait for 1 second. To add a new sequence step, click the plus above or below the step you just added. To add motion to a point, I like using the move sequence step. There are different options of how you can move. You can move directly to a location, or you can move with an offset from your current location. When you select Choose Location and scroll through the options, all of the points that you have saved in your software will show up. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, we can find the 2 points that we have created. If I want to move to row 1, plant 1, I will create a move step that goes directly to that point. Next, if I want to take a picture at this point, I'll click the plus sign again and add the Take Photo step. You don't need to change anything on the step. It will automatically take a photo and save it to the FarmBot software. Like I mentioned, it's good to add another wait. This time, I'll add 2 seconds. Then, if we want to move to the second point we created, we can add another plus, move, and move to that point. If we wanted to then move to an offset from our second point, we would add a short wait, this time maybe 3 seconds, move, then offset from current location, and then I can say I want a Y offset of maybe 100, and keep the X and Z values the same. Once you're happy with your sequence, you can click Save. You can also give your sequence a new name. And this sequence will be saved to your list of sequences. To execute it on its own, you can click Run. I won't do that right now because my robot is currently running a different sequence. It is good to pause a sequence before starting another one so that the robot doesn't try to execute too many things at once. Now, you can scroll down through the list of your sequences and find the new sequence you just created. For the ROS2 system that we are trying to implement, you will have to create a sequence that goes through all of your points and has a bit of time to take a photo. Since we are taking a photo with a depth camera and not the embedded camera that the FarmBot comes with, we don't need a program in to take the picture, but you can still do so if you want to save photos to the FarmBot software. These photos can be found in this tab on the top left for photos. And you can scroll through all of your photos. It will show the date and time when that photo was taken. The sequence for the ROS2 system will go through all of the plants and take a photo, like I've mentioned. My sequence that does that is named raster sequence. And what I've done is I've broken down each row into a separate sequence so that this just looks a little bit cleaner in my FarmBot software. First, I find home, which is one of the sequence steps you can find when adding steps. Then I wait for 1 second, and then I go through each row separately. Then I go home again, and at the end of my full sequence, it's important to reboot, just to ensure that there are no lingering issues with the robot. My channel sequences are as follows. The robot waits for 3 seconds, then it moves to the first point, then it does its camera sequence, which consists of just waiting at the point, and I'm also deciding to take a picture with the FarmBot's camera, and then I move to the next location. My camera sequence also has waits in it, so I didn't add extra wait steps between these. to view the camera sequence in more detail. I wait, I take a photo with the FarmBot software, and I wait again. ROS2 only needs to arrive at the point and it will automatically take a picture with the depth camera based on what we have coded in the program. However, I'm deciding to take a second photo just to be able to see it in the software as well. You don't have to do this though. You can just make this whole sequence be a wait of 10,000 milliseconds. To view the sequence ID, you go to Settings, click View, and say View Celery Script. Turn that on, and then you can go back to Sequences, and each step will show the exact code that it is executing to do that step. This is important because when we set up our configuration file, we will need to find the sequence ID of our overall raster sequence. So I made this raster sequence ID viewer, and the only step I added was the overall raster sequence. And I found my sequence ID by looking right here and copy pasting this number into my configuration file. To create a raster sequence ID viewer, as I did here, you can just make a new sequence and find the sequences you created before, for example, my raster sequence, add that as a step. And then you'll be able to see the ID right there. Now you have learned how to measure and add points in the FarmBot software and how to make sequences using those points. Now you can add your points based on your physical hydroponic system and make a sequence that will go to each point.